Hello and welcome back to the Enricher Business Circle, the podcast for leaders who are playing the long game in business from lunch to exit and beyond. I'm your host, Rickdrieka Bennett. My guest today is a master of entrepreneur life cycle. He launched his first company at the age of 29, has successfully navigated two major exits, and now onto this next venture, all while being a thought leader at the intersection of sales and artificial intelligence. He is the author of Never Sit in the Lobby and a driving force behind innovative projects like Acumen Insight and Salesminds.ai. Please welcome today our guest, Glen. Glen, welcome.
Hi, Rickdrieka. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that wonderful introduction as well.
Thank you. So, Glenn, I am super excited to have you on the show today. I am a advocate of AI in thought leadership as well. I want to start from the beginning. Launching a company at the age of 29 is a huge leap. Can you share the story of your first venture and what was the biggest lessons that you've learned over time?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So as you said, I started at my first business at 29. I love to tell the story that I started my career in sales at
Mhm.
25. I like to say I was a failed government worker in Canada, and my boss said I was better suited working somewhere else, and I was working too fast, basically. And he suggested my career might be better served in sales. And I guess he saw something in me. I don't know back then. So I did get a job in sales at 25, and by 29, I'd noticed, that the owners were actually doing. I was doing quite well in sales actually, but the owners were doing even better, right? And so I thought, how could I end up in the same, sort of situation they were in, right? And where
Mhm.
they owned the company. And I thought, hey, what about doing a like an entrepreneurial venture? In other words, like maybe I could split off part of their business. And I approached them about it, and they categorically refused me and said, no, no, just stick with what you're doing. You're doing a great job. And as the story goes, the next day I resigned to head out on my own, and I realized I would never sort of make it with them. They didn't have any desire to partner up with me or anything like that. So I started my first company sort of at 29 and a half. And, back then what I learned later and was able to put into succinct words was that there's sort of three things you need if you want to make that leap from 9 to 5 to entrepreneurial, like
Mhm.
100% in the game. And, the first thing is that, you need a runway of income, right? Meaning you have to have enough savings to last until you can start taking money out of the business. And I caution people that it's probably going to be 12 to 18 months before you can safely take money out of the company and the way you were taking it out of your job. And so you want to have that runway of either a very understanding spouse that's willing to pay for the mortgage and the groceries, or a nice savings in your account if you're going it alone, or if you're the sole breadwinner. And so that's the first thing you need, is sort of that runway of 12 to 18 months of your monthly expenses. Two, I call it minimum viable product. Not a perfect product, not a perfect mousetrap, not the world's best mousetrap, but something that you can sell, that people will buy, right? So
Mhm.
you need a product line or a product or a service, some kind of software, whatever it is you're selling, you need something that's minimally viable, meaning it's you can take orders and you can collect money from it, right? You don't want to be like spending all your time improving, right? You see,
Right.
get something, start getting orders, right? And then third, what you need is you need your first order that you didn't deserve, as I like to say. Someone's got to take a chance on you in your new life, right? Maybe
Mhm.
you're the greatest salesman in the world, or the greatest person in the world in your old job, but people don't know you in your new company. So when you're taking that leap, you need to know that someone's going to give you an order. So I always say most companies start on an order you didn't deserve. Everyone else after that, you earn, uh, you know, and then some, right? And so, looking back, that's what I realized were the most important things. I did have those things, by the way, and so and I ran that company for 15 years. I sold it in the early 2000s,
Mhm.
and I got an opportunity to start a similar business shortly thereafter, which coincidentally I ran for another 15 years. And I sold that company in 2022. And as you said in the intro, I'm on my third venture, but this time I switched it up a bit. Not only did I change technology areas, I changed geographies, I changed countries as well. So I moved from Toronto to Florida, and so changed citizenships. Now I'm working in the U.S. And now I'm selling to a completely different type of customer. Now I'm selling into the power industry instead of the telecom industry. And everything's new, but I'm doing it. It's the same kind of business. It's a distributorship where we buy products from around the world and we bring them to the customers in the United States market, and we show them how they work, and we sell them, and we service and support those products. And we're basically a wholesale distributor of high-tech electronic instruments to the power industry.
Awesome. And that's a lot in a nutshell, especially around sales and getting started, which kind of lets me kind of perfectly segue to your book, Never Sit in the Lobby, where you motivated from a sales perspective of that book of trying to get things sold, or were you more so looking towards partnerships that inspired you to write the book?
So early on, I started to take on as many mentors as I could when I got into sales, because I realized that I didn't know anything, and there were a lot of people that knew a lot, and it really behooved me to like sort of take notes, right? And so I started practicing and watching what salespeople were doing. Some were doing the right things over and over again, and some people were copying the same mistakes, right? And so I'm like, okay, I want to do this, I don't want to do that. And I started a little rule book, right? And I would name the rules or the mistakes after the people that I learned them by. And I would also try to develop stories, funny stories if I could, and so that I could remember them. And over the years, the book just kept building and building and building. And I would share the stories. People would laugh. People asked me to share the stories at their sales meetings. And eventually people are like, oh, you should write a book, and of course, I never did actually until the pandemic came along in 2020, and I had nothing to do. In Canada, we were locked down for quite a while, and I thought, hey, what better time to, there's nothing else to do. I might as well write a book, right? And so I took all of the rules that I had learned and written down, and I took the top 57 tips, and I sort of put them together into my little rule book. And that's sort of the genesis of how the book came about. And it was really just a rule book from the trenches, and going back from when I started in 1985 right up until today. And I still practice and preach most of those rules, or all of the rules actually. I mean, on a daily basis when I'm visiting customers.
Awesome. Oh, could you share like one or two of the rules that you practice are still
Sure.
on
Yeah.
today?
So of course, yeah, I'd love to. So the book is called Never Sit in the Lobby. And people are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, when you sit down in the lobby, you often get distracted. You pull out your phone, you start going over the grocery list with your spouse and who's picking up the kids, and don't forget the soccer game. And the customer walks in and you're not even paying attention. You don't even see them. And I'm always trying to teach people how to get, act, and stay in front of their customers, and to be a pleasure to do business with always. And so being distracted and talking to someone else when they walk in is not a good look. That's not a pleasure to do business with. So I found standing in the lobby, is the best way of staying at attention and focus on the customer who's going to present themselves. And the next rule that goes right along with it is always have something in your hand and something in your mind. And so when the customer walks in, you can hand them something and you can tell them something. You're not fumbling for, oh, how are you? Or, how's it going? Or the weather or anything like that. You've got something specific to ask them, get right to the point, and you've got something to give them. Now, it might be the reason why you came to see them in the first place. Maybe they asked for a quotation. Maybe they asked for literature, something like that. And instead of just emailing it to them or sending it to them or what have you, you bring it to them, right? And that's where the rule never fax the facts and never ship the SHIT, to the customer, right? And so I made that up back in the 80s when we faxed things, and the rule stuck to this day. But I never faxed the fax, and I never shipped the stuff, right? And the reason why is because that's a great excuse to go visit them, right? And
Mhm.
so I have something in my hand, and if I don't have a quote or literature to give them, maybe I have a mouse pad or a water bottle or whatever we're giving away to customers that month, right? We've always got free things we're giving away, right? And then the next little rule goes right after that is I always ask them for a mini tour, like a little tour of the place where they're going to use my stuff, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm selling equipment, so they're typically using it in a lab or in a production environment or some part of the building, right? Maybe they're putting on a new wing, or but maybe sell warehouse equipment, maybe they're expanding the warehouse, or maybe you sell office equipment or software for but you want to try to get behind the veil, as I call it, behind the drape of the Wizard of Oz, right? You want to see what's behind the curtain, right? Because that's where the magic happens. Because you if you're talking to them on Zoom or what have you, you might have a great conversation, but you're not going to be able to see which mouse pads on their desk that the last competitor handed to them, right? You're not going to see the Stanley water bottle, from the other competitor who's getting all the business, right? How are you going to see all that over Zoom? You won't. And so by getting there, getting to the lobby, then asking for the little tour of the area where your products are going to be used, it gives you a chance to like I say, get behind the veil and see what's going on. Because if they have 9 of your competitors' products, they probably only want you to keep the competitor honest. They really are not genuinely interested in what you are selling for the
Mhm.
most part. Whereas if it's a brand new building, chances are you have a much more level playing field in order to approach the sale. And you can gauge your behavior and how much effort you're going to put into the account based on what you're learning as you're going through the building, right? And
Right.
then one more little rule I'll just throw in there is, if you show up early, you don't want to sit in the lobby. You want to stand, wait in your car until the appointed time. And while you're in the car, practice my rule called never forget a face, right? And never forget a face is where, as you get older, you got a memory, but the problem is it's very deep and long, but it's very slow, right? And when, and oftentimes if you're selling into a territory, you're visiting a customer more than once. So you're
Mhm.
meeting people and you need to remember their face. That's what I do, is like remember it, right? And that way I don't remember it in real time when I'm walking down the hall on my mini tour. And so I look and I say, oh, there's Sally. Oh yeah, that's the lady with red hair. And then Jack, that's the tall guy, and then Bob's the short guy. And you just do whatever it takes to remember all these people and bring them from, your long-term memory right up to the front of your mind. So that when
Mhm.
you're walking down the hall, you could be like, oh, hey, Bob, Jack, Sally. And this person that you're with is like, holy, Glenn knows everybody. And of course, everyone that you're saying hello to by names going, oh, that Glenn person, he always remembers my name. He's such
Mhm.
a pleasure to do business with. And these are how you build rapport and long-term relationships with customers that they appreciate and that makes the difference. And people are like, oh, it's not really that important. And I go, well, it is that important, because when you walk by someone in the hall and they remember your name and you're the salesman and you forget their name, that is
Right.
not a good look. You literally hurt their feelings, right? And when you remember their name and you use their name, you actually make them feel good for quite some time. They go back to their desk and they have this warm feeling of, oh, that Glenn guy, I haven't seen him in a year and he remembered my name, and et cetera, right? And so these are all just how I build upon rapport building with customers. And yeah, that's four tips, I think.
I
Yeah.
think it was amazing, and I feel that for service-based businesses, I think that's a great way or a great tip to leverage, especially because I feel that relationship is essential in business, period. And a lot of people are starting to shift and lose that level of relationship.
Right.
And relationship, especially in the world of AI, is going to be that key factor moving forward. And people need to know how to build effective relationships with their clients.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I use AI to figure out new ways of selling to the same customers,
Mhm.
finding new customers to sell things to that I never thought of in the past, and finding new names and numbers of customers I never knew existed. But in the end, I'm always at the end, the final part of the puzzle is me, right? Presenting myself to the customer. Like the AI is not going to do the presentation. It's not going to truly build rapport with the customer, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get in front of more customers. I'm going to be able to respond to more proposals. I'm going to find new markets and opportunities where I couldn't have thought them up. There's just not enough time to think up all those ideas, and and present myself and have more, like I say, more ups to the bat, right? I get up to
Right.
bat more. And if I can hit more balls quicker, I have more chance of getting on base and then making a home run and getting a deal. And that's where AI comes into play for me, is increasing your productivity and
Mm-hmm.
increasing your opportunities. And it doesn't replace you, and you can't just type something in ChatGPT and then paste it in an email and think the job's done. The customer's probably going to sense it's not genuine, but it can help you to come up with ways and means of approaching a customer you never would have thought of. And then you add the human touch to it, and that's where the magic starts to really come into play, right?
Right. I definitely agree. I think that it's best to do like 80% AI and then make
Yeah,
sure it's at least 20% human versus
exactly.
trying to put everything on AI. Because, and one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when you're using AI to create those codes and things like that, there is this digital code that is connected with
Yeah,
what you're copying and pasting that that is being sent over. So if you're not careful, that's another way people will know that you genuinely did not create
yeah,
it on your own, but through AI.
yeah. I have a funny story where a lady had shared this story of her. She went on sabbatical,
Mhm.
and she was telling the story of where she went, whatever. And I wanted to say a nice comment and what have you. And so I pasted her long post into ChatGPT, and I said, "Hey, write me a thoughtful comment," right? And because I wanted to be thoughtful enough to send a comment, but I really didn't have enough time to write a long, thoughtful comment, right? So I got ChatGPT to write it for me, and I kind of just pretty much pasted it into LinkedIn and said, "Oh, great, great stuff you're doing." And then I pasted this comment, and then I got this nice, thoughtful, long comment back from her. And I realized by reading it that, I had pasted in ChatGPT and sent her that comment. Then she pasted mine in ChatGPT and pasted me the result. And so here's ChatGPT having this conversation with itself, and no humans are really involved, right? And I'm like, oh, this isn't the way it's supposed to be, and so you have to moderate how much you use it, and like you say, 80-20 I think is a good balance. And
Yeah, and then also I know the statement about you're saying that it's not going to replace humans. I think the problem is going to be those who refuse to adapt to it and use it are going to
right,
be the ones that get replaced
yeah,
with their job.
yes, yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, um I'm hoping that like the smart people are using it every day, and they'll be the people that you know that get the most value out of it down the road, right? Because they
Mhm.
and but people that are just stubborn, that's like people that drove horses and buggies, right? Or something. They didn't, oh, I'm never going to learn to drive a car, right? That'll never take off, right? Well, you know type of thing. And you have to adapt to the times, and these tools are designed for humans to use them to interact with other humans, right? So
So I guess my question would be, I know you talked about how your current venture is something entirely different from your past two ventures that you did your two major exits from. And many after the first exit would have probably just rode off into the sunset and not thought
yeah.
about business again whatsoever. But with the shift of you including AI and you're also still in sales, what kind of playbook are you really using when it comes to AI?
So I'm mainly using it for to identify, like, because we're dealing with large power companies in the United
Mhm,
States. A lot of it is very formal business processes, and they
mhm,
post, for instance, they post their the requirements on government websites and on public websites for the general industry to respond to, right? And
mhm.
so somebody, in the past, I would have to go on those sites myself and look for the opportunities and figure out which ones I want to bid on. And I've been able to, with the help of some coders and what have you, to develop some AI agents that help me to scan these sites and look for any kind of an angle of what we do and compare it to the tenders and requests for quote that are posted on all the government sites that we have listed and all of the public sites for the utilities and whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm getting way more opportunities that I would never have found them in the past. First of all, I just wouldn't have that much time to scan all those websites.
Right.
And so I can find more opportunities to quote. Then responding to those quotes is very time consuming. And just like you said, 80/20, 80% of them is usually repetitive. Like, how long have you been in business? What's your
Right.
insurance? What's your liability? Give me examples of this, give me examples of that. And because the system has access to my servers privately, not on the public market, but it's a private model. It's not using Google. It's using, an AI model to look through the servers of all of our history of 20 years in business, of what we've done and what we can do, right? And this is, and then it fills out 80% of the RFP for me. And all I have to do is go in and put the pricing,
Mhm.
the value proposition, and maybe customize the letter a little bit. And so I can respond to more documents faster and get more opportunities to quote. And so I use it. That's one of the huge benefits that I get from it. And the second one is coming up with sort of a marketing playbook in terms of, these are all my vendors, these are all the technology areas I'm in. How can I curate a message over the next 3 months to my customers on social media,
Mhm.
newsletters, email campaigns? And I mean, I could do all this on my own, but it's just so much easier, using the AI to develop marketing campaigns. And again, it comes up with a shell. You absolutely have to curate what it gives you. You can't just cut and paste this stuff. But,
Mhm.
you know, coming up with 30 different posts for, to post every 2 or 3 days for the next 90 days or whatever, that's a lot of work, right? But
Right.
it can do it so easily, right? And then you ask for it to write the general outline for each post, then you go in, you tweak it, you humanize it, you take out all the special codes, like you said. Um, and again, it just makes everything so much lighter work, right? The other thing is I use it for like every month when the accountant does the statements and things like
Mhm.
that. I just willy-nilly, I just drop the statements into the system and I say, analyze all my financials like a CFO and tell me what I need to look at, right? And it gives me the kind of things I would never think of on my own about cash flow management and use of funds and days outstanding of payables and
Mhm.
whereas normally a lot of small business people, they're thinking like, do I have money in the bank? Yep, I'm fine. Okay. Did I make payroll? Then everything's good, right? And that's kind of the extent of it, right? And they just go on to the next day. And so those are just three areas where I use AI every single day in developing the playbook for my new business. And I also share that with companies and and do it's sort of a side hustle that I have, but sort of trying to work with other customers and stuff. But
Mhm.
admittedly, I'm mainly busy with my distributorship company in Florida. It does keep me quite busy, and so I'm not doing as much side hustle as I would like to. But yeah, so.
Awesome. And with that, for the entrepreneurs who are listening to this episode, what advice would you give them for those who are trying to scale their business so that in the future they can prepare for an exit?
So yeah, so if they've already started a business,
Mhm.
and they want to exit, they've already got a company, right? And so the first thing they need to look at is that, if you're just having one good year, that's typically not enough. Most companies that are going to want to buy your business are going to want to see 3 years of good numbers. And
Mhm.
so And they can figure this out by talking to their accountant or whatever, but most businesses will look at your profit for those 3 years. They will average it and they'll multiply it by a multiple. And typically, if your profits are like below 1 million, they'll probably multiply between 2 and 3, right? If your profits
Right.
are between 1 and 5 million, they'll probably multiply between 4 and 6. If it's over 10 million or whatever, you're probably getting a 10 plus multiple. But first thing is first is, if you have a number in your mind for your business, the math needs to math, right? So you need to take your profits, average it over 3 years, and multiply by the world that you're in. Are you in the 3 times, 5 times, 10 times multiple? And is that enough money for you? Is that the number you want? If it's not, you need to wait till you're bigger. And
Mhm.
and other people is that, it can be very costly having a bad year in the middle of your 3-year cycle if you're trying to exit, right? Because they're not very forgiving in terms of looking past a bad year, right? This year was good, this year was bad, and the next year was good. They're still going to want to average it out, right? And
Right.
the other thing is that you want to make sure that the business isn't solely relying on you. That you have to say to yourself, could I literally, like, if I broke a hip and I needed to go into rehab for 90 days, like, what would happen to my company? Do I have all my SIFs documented and process? And could people step in and review the processes and run the systems? It might be a little bit scary for in the beginning, but are those processes there, right? You want to process your business and get all the right people so that it's not all about you, right? If you're the magic, no one's going to want to buy your business because they're not going to want you to stay. They want your company. They don't want you, right? And
Right.
so, um, but also don't spend too much time getting everything perfect, because the people that buy the business, they want to bring their systems and their specialties to bear on your company. And they may be throwing away things that you spend a lot of money on, like and whereas they can get a big this one's not, it's not obvious to a lot of people, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to spend all this money on a software system that's going to be perfect, and then I'm going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with developers making it even better. But the
Mhm.
problem is, unless it's integral to your business, the new owners might want to incorporate your systems into their system, and so all that money becomes wasted. And instead of being value, it becomes a negative, right? And so
Mhm.
you just want to have your systems working well. And you want to have some areas where the company can come in and get some wins early on in the process, because that allows them to show incremental value, increase in value in the business early on, right? Like, they came in, they put in this system, they were able to streamline this operation, and then the value company's now worth more 3 months after they bought it. They want to be able to show that to their shareholders and to their stakeholders, right?
Right. I love it. And I can definitely tell that this has been an absolutely great episode, especially in strategy, execution, and evolving. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us on today. And for those who are wanting to connect with you, could you provide information for that?
Yeah, people that want to get a hold of me, you mean, and what have you? Or
Yes.
yeah, so they can just go to my website, glenpoulos.com, or connect with me on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn's the best way to get a hold of me. My website links to all my social media, my book, and what have you. But if they want to talk immediately, just connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk to any of your guests or your audience and what have you. And I'm on there every day. I'm a top voice on LinkedIn, so I'm there all day long. So.
Also, and thank you to all of our listeners for joining in on this episode of the Enricher Business Circle. Remember, the goal is not to build a business, it is to build a legacy. Until next time, keep enriching yourself and your goals.